That's hard. You have to face the consequences of life. That's hard to do. So instead, we'll try to lie and get around it and manipulate. Why is it that you'll cheat on somebody? Because you don't have the courage to be an upright, forth-standing person. That's why. Because you lack self-esteem on your own part, so you're trying to get affection and attention from as many places as possible because you lack it in yourself. Probably because you're not willing to receive the love that you're being given in the first place. Something about that scares you. It takes courage to settle with one person and move forward through life despite all of its tragedies, despite all of its difficulties, despite its challenges, despite its suffering even. Find one person and stick together and plow through. And people will say, well, what happens if you end up hating each other? Then you need to examine yourself and find out why that's happening and solve that problem and fix it. And then we'll say, people just sometimes grow apart. What, like teeth? We just went our different ways. No. Because you weren't committed to being in the same direction in the first place. Well, you don't understand the situation. Yeah, and you don't understand what it is to commit and see things through and persevere. So many of you are paying attention to those words I just said more than anything else I've said today. Because you know it's real, you know it's true. And that's what you aim at. Okay, great. Wow, my country's done some great things. But you know what I did? I committed to something, stayed the course, and didn't just stay the course, but I made it flourish and made something great come out of it. Because that's the stuff that's going to give you meaning and purpose in life. It's the fulfilling of responsibility and commitments. Commitments and responsibilities that you agree to, that you make, that are important to you, not anybody else. You can't commit to the promises you make. My God, what can you commit to? What can you see through? Find something in your life, commit to it, complete it, and then, my God, you'll be shocked and surprised to find out what you can accomplish in your life when you commit to something and see it through. And I'm not saying therefore, so just stop feeling the way you feel. It's not that easy, of course. I'm just narrating the case. I'm just pointing it out. And so sometimes one of the shields that we'll use against being judged, especially if we don't feel like we're much, if we feel like we're kind of lacking in areas of our lives, are exactly the kinds of things that Hoffer's talking about here. Like, for example, maybe you don't feel so wonderful about yourself because maybe you haven't accomplished a whole lot. But you know who has accomplished a lot? Your nation. Your nation, yeah. So what's the best nation in the world? You all are afraid to say it. Well, once we get to race and religion, I can't wait till we get there. What's the best nation in the world? Which one? You don't know? Who? Nevada. That's not a nation, dude. That's a state. If you said Texas, fine. They think they're their own country, but I don't care. Who is it? Mexico. Okay. So, Mexico. Sorry, I said it wrong. All right, so Mexico. That's the best nation in the world. So even if I'm not so great, but you know what? I'm Mexican. Therefore, I have a tradition I'm proud of. What did you do in it? I was born. All right. And what's the best religion in the world? What's the top religion in the world? Everything else is false. Which one?
Everything else is false?
Yeah, but except for?
Buddhism.
Yeah, that's the same thing second period said. Second period said Buddhism too. No, we can't go like Catholic, man. We're in a school. There's kids here. Buddhism. All right, so Buddhism.
God dang.
They're gonna get worse than that, believe me, as the year goes on. So, and of course, we all know the best race in the world is black. All right. It's me. The race of Scanlon. It's a one-man race.
Oh my God.
Right. So if you're a black Buddhist Mexican,
Okay.
you're on top of the world, dude.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now,
Oh God. Oh, holy cow.
okay, now holy cause. Now this is interesting. You notice that he seems to distinguish between a religion and a holy cause. So when we think of something that's holy, what do we mean by something being holy?
Like
Not like my pants when I was a kid, but yeah, but notice he distinguishes
a
between
crusade. Don't
religion.
tell me there's going to be another
Yeah.
crusade coming down.
You have
God.
like a God motivates you.
Yeah, so if you've got something that motivates you, that's almost like a religion. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be like divinely motivated, but it operates that same way. It's kind of a hard concept for us to get our heads around, but there are things that people approach in life as though it's their holy cause. Can you think of something like that? In other words, if you don't have religion, maybe you've got this one thing, and that kind of functions in your life the way that religion does.
Eating cheese.
What's that?
Eating cheese.
Eating cheese.
My only
Think about like a type of I don't know how to say without basically giving it away, but think about like a belief system that's not religious, that does a lot of times motivate people's lives or guide people's lives.
Confucianism.
That's kind of like a religion. That is more of a philosophy. What's that? Money? Yeah, so it could be something like a value system. Like, for example, if I ask you, like, what do you value in your life? And some people will say, money. Yeah, cheese. Maybe if cheese is a metaphor for money, then perhaps, yes. But it could be your philosophy. If you're someone who's like particularly philosophically oriented, something that a lot of people, like today especially, your politics, it will function in some people's lives the same way that religion will function in other people's lives. In other words, these will be kind of value systems that guide you through life. And again, your value system could just be something as simple as whatever makes me money. Okay. All right. Never mind. Maybe it's your philosophy. In other words, your value system in your head of right and wrong, morals and ethics. And for a lot of people today, it's their politics, their political systems that motivate them. So now, we look back on this, and even if I haven't done much in my life, even if I'm kind of mediocre at best, maybe even a little bit less than that, it doesn't matter because I'm a proud Mexican. Or, even if that's not the case, even if Mexico decides they don't want me and I get kicked out of the country again, then maybe it's true story for another time though. Maybe, but at least, you know what? I'm a proud Buddhist. Okay, but even if they don't want me, you know what though? My race, I'm a proud black man.
Is you become Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson trying to become me. Let's get that direction in the right order. Or maybe I haven't done much in my life, but you know what? I support this political system, or I support that value system, or have that philosophical system. In other words, if you haven't done much for yourself in your own life, one of the ways that we make ourselves more important is by joining ourselves to larger causes. And we typically will say that and think of it like it's a terrible thing, but it really isn't. Consider this. How much do you matter as an individual? How much do you matter? There's one of you. What's that?
Scientifically or?
No, value-wise. On what?
Well, how successful you are.
Okay, then how do you measure success? How much money? So who's the most important person in the world?
Just be popularity.
Well, you just said money, though.
I mean, it could also be popularity. Accomplishment.
Or like rate.
Accomplishment? What's that?
Or like a certain rate, like CEO.
Yeah, maybe like a job that they have. Yeah, I don't know. But even then, have you guys ever looked at space and been like, it's big?
It keeps getting bigger.
And it keeps getting bigger. That's the creepy thing about it. Every time you're looking at it, you're like, wow, it just got way bigger. Like even as much as it expanded in the time I started talking about this, even that the size of that expansion is larger than most of us can fathom. And even if you're Jeff Bezos, if we're going to measure it by the wealthiest person in the world, even if it's...
Jeff Bezos is the wealthiest person?
It's usually him and Elon Musk.
Okay.
Yeah, those two guys go back and forth. Even if you are, I don't know who the most popular person in the world is. And who's that? You. So even if you're me, that's it. You're YouTube famous. Even if you are the most successful, however it is that you manage that. You guys remember Nebuchadnezzar?
What?
Nebuchadnezzar.
No.
No, Nebuchadnezzar. My goodness. How could you not know?
Nebuchadnezzar, I think I know his name.
You don't. You're a liar. Nebuchadnezzar is a name that today, if I say that, almost nobody will ever have heard of this person outside of a few places. Like, he appears in the Bible at one point, but he's, by and large, he was a...
Oh yeah, the Bible. No.
You remember that book? Interesting book, right? He's essentially, he's an old ruler, and he's in Syria. He conquered the entire known world of his time. Yeah, and yet we fast forward a couple thousand years, and outside of like university professors, very few people know who this person was.
It was in the Bible.
Yeah, so no matter what it is that you think you're going to accomplish that's going to help you be remembered, what are you going to do that's greater than conquer the entire known world? And you think you're going to be remembered? Show of hands, how many of you guys know your parents' names? Keep them up, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. How many of you guys know your grandparents' names? Ooh, how many of you guys know your great-grandparents' names?
My parents have never even talked to them. So.
I've never met them. So one person, two people. So 3 people. So if your goal in life is to be remembered, at best you've got 3 generations. And then you're going to be lost to history. It'd be like you never existed in the first place. Anyway, questions, comments, concerns, happy Tuesday. But, I'll be right there. Now, if you look at the entire universe, by the way, that's one person on one planet. By the way, you're one of only 7 billion people on this planet. So there's how much less you matter. And then you look out at the size of the solar system. We're one planet among 10. Pluto's a planet. Screw anybody who wants to argue with me, I'll fight you on that. Yes, I could beat up Neil deGrasse Tyson. So now there's 10 planets, only one of which has life, which your life is only going to last, what, 70, 80, at most 100 years? And then you look out the size of our solar system in comparison to our galaxy. We are one tiny little speck in the corner of that galaxy. And that one galaxy, by the way, which is so enormous we can't even fathom it, that's one of only 2 trillion of these things that we see in the entire known universe. So I'll ask you again, how much do you matter?
Not much.
Even if you accomplish the conquering of the entire known world. So all of us intuitively know that. And what do we get for all of that? We die. Boom, gone. You guys ever see that movie, Gangs of New York, any chance?
Gangs of New York.
I think that's what it's called. It's a really sad scene at the end. These 2 guys are buried next to each other. There's like a time-lapse thing where it shows their graves in New York, and then it shows over time like the buildings going up and a couple that may have come down. And the whole time it shows like their graves, that grass grows over them, they build a party on top of it. Essentially these 2 guys are completely lost to history. It's a movie that's made about them, but they're completely lost to history. So if our goal in life is to be remembered, it's probably a fool's errand. And you recognize that intuitively. I don't have to tell you that. That's something that you already intuitively know. So then how is it that you can make your little tiny speck of a life matter? Well, you can join it to somebody else. You know? And then your life, as insignificant as it is, it's still twice as valuable as it was before because you've joined yourself to something. Now, you can also now make your life matter a little bit more because now you can join your life to others that come from you. And then you can also make your life matter just a little bit more because you can now identify yourself with a larger group and another group and another group and other things there. And this is one of the ways that we expand the influence or the presence of our lives by joining ourselves to larger groups. The problem with it is this: by doing so, you give up your individuality. You're no longer this person or this person. You're now this person. And now after that, you're no longer just these 2. You now are this, and now you're part of that. And what this person does here is going to reflect on you. And what that country over there does now reflects on you, especially if you claim it as your domain. Especially if you claim it as your domain. If you join yourself to this thing over here, whatever it is that group does now reflects on you. So what you gain is you gain significance. You're now way more significant than you were because you're part of a group that gains significance. But what you lose is your individuality. It's no longer just you. You're no longer responsible for just your own actions. So, long way around it. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I know, like 10 minutes ago he had his hand up. I'm like, I'm going somewhere. Go ahead.
What was I going to ask?
And I was saying that it was the very beginning when I was talking about the meaninglessness of your size compared to history and that Nebuchadnezzar. And yeah.
It was basically like, so I mean, what kind of impact do we need, like, to be remembered? Because I mean, we remember George Washington, but I mean, you're saying there's this grand king or whatever that ruled the whole world. So like, is there a time where like we might even like future generations might forget about like George Washington?
What's George Washington best known for, guys?
Being the first president.
First
Chopping
president
down the
of
tree.
General.
chopping down the China tree. He's a general. What else?
All with teeth.
It was a
$100
model
bill.
Had some wooden teeth.
bill.
Yeah, he's on the dollar bill. All right, so we know a few things about him. Where was he born?
Very
Pennsylvania.
Close. Well, how about this? Where's his house? He still has a house. I mean, he's not there alive, but you know. So, all right, so we know some. So we know a few things about him. At what point in now, when you guys are raised up and you guys have kids, are you guys going to sit your kids around and gather around, children? I'm going to tell you the stories of George Washington. What's that?
That's why they go to school.
Yeah, and that's my point. So in school, how do I explain this? In school, every year, history gets bigger, right? Makes sense? Every generation, history gets bigger. And every generation, we argue about what we should be talking about, what we should be teaching you about. And as we now say, oh, we should focus on fill in the blank of somewhat everything that we're teaching right now, that by necessity means we're not going to teach you about other things. Or we're going to teach you less about other things. Because you've only got so much time in the year. So at some point, I imagine that how much time we can devote to George Washington will be so small that maybe we'll have a picture of him, maybe. I imagine by then the $1 bill will go away because it'll be like a penny, so we won't need it anymore. And we might know a couple things, like maybe some of us might remember he has a house at Mount Vernon, and so in Virginia, so perhaps. But for the most part, at best, we might remember one or two things. But then as time goes on, we will forget more of those things. How far that happens? It'll take longer now, maybe, people say, because now you can preserve things digitally. So now we have a better memory because we can record history more accurately. Yeah, but that's the thing. We can record more history, can't we? Which means that your attention can only go so many places. You know, it's kind of like, why don't we remember who our great-grandparents were? I didn't even get to great-great-grandparents. And those are our family. Those are the people who we come from. Because we didn't take an interest in that. What did you take an interest in instead? You know, I took a greater interest in philosophy than I took in my great-grandparents. I think all the time people will ask me things about my parents. I lost both of my parents. Well, I didn't lose them. I know where they are. That'd be terribly irresponsible. You lose your parents. You lose one parent, that's misfortune. You lose two, that's just carelessness. No more parents for you. So I don't know. I lost both of my parents, but it amazes me when I think back to it, like how few questions I asked them about things. I know a few things about them, but I don't know a lot about them. You know, and I talk to people who will tell me all about their parents, and they'll ask me, what are your parents? I go, I think my dad's name was...
You think?
It's not that bad, but you get the idea. And why? Well, because I took a greater interest in other things. Perhaps because I thought they'd be around forever. And then literally one day, I went to go talk to a professor, and then an hour later, my mom wasn't there. Literally, I went to go teach a jiu-jitsu class, and I got a phone call right before the class started that my dad wasn't there anymore. Just that fast. There's always tomorrow. I keep my dad's last Facebook post on my phone. He talks about what a busy weekend he has coming up and all the things he has to get done. It's like, no, there's something else that's gonna happen before then, that you're not gonna make it to those things. There will be no new floors in your house, Dad. There's something else that's gonna take precedent in your life. But this is the way life a lot of times happens, just out of nowhere, suddenly. And while we get so caught up, we keep thinking like, man, I should have asked more about that. I should have gotten to know that more. Because those are the things, by the way, like, would that have, and that very well, by the way, can be part of this as well. Well, here's who my family was. Here's where my family came from. There might be a pride in that. But you're going to find that very oftentimes we take pride in these things because we don't take a great deal of pride in ourselves. Or I shouldn't say pride. Nothing good ever comes from pride, but more of like a claiming of excellence for ourselves. Like if I were to ask you, I may have already asked you, like, what's so lovable about you? You gotta love yourself, right? You have to love yourself. We'll even post on Instagram, you have to love yourself. We'll get all kinds of likes and people will say, you've gotta love yourself because nobody else will. No, you gotta love yourself. But then if I ask that question, what's so lovable about you? And I ask that question not with my head going around and going like, well, what's so lovable about you? But like really asking, what is so lovable about you? Well, I'm loyal. So's my dog. How does that stand out to you? Well, I'm very sweet, I'm very kind. So's my cat. Fyodor, he's a very sweet boy. When I feed, his name is Fyodor. I named him Fyodor after Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Russian novelist. And I feed Fyodor. Poor Fyodor, he'll have no food in his bowls. And I'll get home and you know how most cats will cry to you because they don't have food? Fyodor doesn't do that. Fyodor is very happy when I get home. He comes over because he just wants to hang out with Daddy. He's a sweet boy. And then I feed Fyodor. And does Fyodor go running over to the food? No. He starts to nuzzle my legs and everything because he just wants me to know, Dad, I appreciate you. And then once he's given appreciation, then he will go eat. So I don't know. Fyodor is a pretty sweet boy. What makes you better than Fyodor? I don't know. But that's part of the point. Because you have to investigate yourself and really deeply, genuinely ask yourself, what is so wonderful and spectacular about me? Because there probably is something. But if you've never really thought about it before, if you've never really internalized and said, you know what? Example I used last period. You know what? I tell the truth. At the very least, I tell the truth. You could always count on me to be honest with you. Do you realize how big of a deal that is? That somebody would be a truth teller? Like if you really stop and think about it at some point, and this is what I mean about examining yourself, really think about that. In order to tell the truth, you have to be really goddamn strong to tell the truth. Because weak people have to lie. I don't trust weak people. I don't trust liars, because liars they're weak. You can't trust a deceptive person. They have to use lies to protect themselves because they're not strong enough to stand up for truth. This is why, weak people, and they're always like, talking behind your back or they're stabbing you in the back. Notice how everything is always behind your back when you're not looking, because they can't confront anything. They can't confront reality. They sure as hell can't confront you. You're a weak person. In other words, we have to lie. Why? Because we don't have the courage to just say, I didn't do them. I screwed up. I need to take the consequences for that. Because that's hard. You have to face the consequences of life. That's hard to do. So instead, we'll try to lie and get around it and manipulate. Why is it that you'll cheat on somebody? Because you don't have the courage to be an upright, forth-standing person. That's why. Because you lack self-esteem on your own part, so you're trying to get affection and attention from as many places as possible because you lack it in yourself. Probably because you're not willing to receive the love that you're being given in the first place. Something about that scares you. Yeah, I'll let that sit in for a little bit too.
Let that sink in.
Yeah, because that's what you're aiming at. Because it takes courage to settle with one person and move forward through life despite all of its tragedies, despite all of its difficulties, despite its challenges, despite its suffering even. To find one person and stick together and plow through. And people will say, well, what happens if you end up hating each other? Then you need to examine yourself and find out why that's happening and solve that problem and fix it. And then we'll say, people just sometimes grow apart. What, like teeth? We just went our different ways. No, because you weren't committed to being in the same direction in the first place. Well, you don't understand the situation. Yeah, and you don't understand what it is to commit and see things through and persevere.
That was so real.
But it's true, and we know this intuitively, which is why it bothers us so much, and yet, so many of you are paying attention to those words I just said more than anything else I've said today. Because you know it's real, you know it's true. And that's what you aim at. Okay, great, wow, my country's done some great things. But you know what I did? I committed to something, stayed the course, and didn't just stay the course, but I made it flourish and made something great come out of it. Even if the only great thing that came out of it was the truth and the fulfilling of obligation and responsibility. Because that's the stuff that's going to give you meaning and purpose in life. It's the fulfilling of responsibility and commitments. Commitments and responsibilities that you agree to, that you make, that are important to you, not anybody else. I mean, you can't commit to the promises you make. My God, what can you commit to? What can you see through in life? And why would you bother? So first things first, commit. Make it, whatever it is, find something in your life, commit to it, complete it, and then, my God, you'll be shocked and surprised to find out what you can accomplish in your life when you commit to something and see it through. Nothing can stop you at that point. Nothing can stop you at that point. The only thing that will stop you is going to be yourself. What if I come across challenges? I promise you, you will. Every challenge you overcome, you'll become stronger for. So when you don't do that, that's what Hoffer says we're doing. You don't find excellence in yourself, so you look for excellence everywhere outside of yourself and join yourself to it. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Tuesday.